Welcome back to Unite Pieces Recap. In this video, we will bring you the storyline of the movie called Island of Fire, aka The Prisoner, from the year 1990. This movie tells the story of Wang Wei, a cop, goes undercover in a prison to investigate a murder and infiltrate a group of prisoners. He has to deal with a gang of criminals and eventually uncovers the shocking truth. So, without further ado, let's get into the video. At the beginning of the movie, we are shown Wang Wei, who is having dinner with his future wife, his partner, and his father-in-law. Wang himself is an Interpol policeman who has just returned from duty in America. Wang took his girlfriend out, while his partner also left, leaving Wang's father-in-law in the house. After arriving at the car, they kiss, until they see a stranger coming out of the house. Wang immediately chases and tries to shoot the man, but he gets into the car intending to run away, and suddenly... And it turns out, the stranger killed his father. Afterward, the police came to investigate, and during the process, Wang and his partner identified the fingerprints left behind, and discovered that this perpetrator was a convict who should have been sentenced to death. Wang and his colleague were astonished and puzzled. How could a person who was considered dead suddenly come to commit murder? He thinks that this is all orchestrated by someone. He then plans to enter the prison where the prisoner came from, and wants to investigate what really happened. After 1 week, with the help of his colleague, Wang was finally put into prison with a fake identity. Arrived in prison, he was immediately bullied by other prisoners, like an introduction for new prisoners. In the cell, he made a pretty good friend named Miao Sheng. He told Wang what to do in prison so that they could live quietly and comfortably. Meanwhile, in this prison there is also a prisoner who has often been in and out of prison, named Fatty Lu Shi-chia. Today he got a letter from his son, saying that his son had a birthday. He also planned to escape from prison so that he could visit his son. He then approached the prison warden, and said that he would cook the meat in the kitchen for the officers. The prison warden easily allowed it, while ordering people to guard him in the kitchen. Lu then began to cook stir-fry meat while looking for an opening to escape. Once the guard was caught off guard, Lu immediately hit the guard unconscious. He then grabbed the guard's clothes so he could get out of prison. In short, after getting out, he ran through the forest until he met a passing car, where Lu stopped the car and told the people inside to get out. He then took the car and clothes from the people, and went straight to see his son who was at school. After arriving, he saw that his son was very happy for his arrival, and he immediately took him for a vacation to the tourist park. After a day of playing at the tourist park, Lu then drove his son back to the dormitory. He promised his son that he would see him again next year. After his son went up to the dormitory, the police came and arrested him again. When he returned to prison, Lu began to be tortured. His legs were beaten until they were almost broken by the prison warden for daring to escape repeatedly. After being tortured, Lu was put into solitary confinement. Meanwhile, on the other hand, a professional billiard player named Leung was preparing to make the final match in the World Championship. Before the match took place, he was bribed by a bookie to resign. However, during the match, he still won this match and became the champion, so the mafia bookie became annoyed and would get rid of him. Bookie henchmen came to Leung and his girlfriend that night. They immediately attacked and tried to gang up on them. Although outnumbered, Leung was still able to win against the henchmen. However, his girlfriend was stabbed by the dealer with a knife right behind her back. Leung immediately took her to the hospital, but when he got there, the doctor said that she had to be operated on, and at a cost of $200,000. Not having that much money, Leung then went to gamble. Luckily, he managed to win while playing poker, and wanted to go straight back to the hospital to pay for his girlfriend's surgery. But unfortunately, the person who lost was the owner of the cafe, and he wouldn't let Leung leave, even accusing him of cheating. Eventually, a fight broke out between him and the cafe boss's henchmen. Initially, Leung managed to win despite the numbers, but the cafe boss silently attacked Leung with a knife, but Leung returned the attack and killed the cafe boss. It was revealed that the cafe boss was the brother of Lau, a dealer in the city. He was furious after hearing the news that his brother was killed, and promised to kill Leung no matter what. In short, Leung was put in the same cell as Wang. When he entered the prison, he was immediately targeted by many other inmates, who turned out to be henchmen of Lau who had been in prison for a long time. During a break, They tried to kill Leung using a knife. Fortunately, he immediately parried the attack and attacked back, but they kept coming and ganged up on Leung. Leung was hit with several stabs until the guards came and separated them. He was then taken to the prison clinic for treatment. On that day, Kong, the leader of this prison, was released from solitary confinement. He was always feuding with the warden, and because of that the warden always gave him a hard time and often put him in solitary. Kong was a mafia boss, and while in prison he was also a big boss. He was always at odds with the warden, and so the warden always gave him a hard time and often put him in solitary confinement, but Kong still wouldn't submit. Once out of solitary confinement, Kong was immediately greeted with respect by the other prisoners, because he was indeed the ruler of this prison. In short, after 2 weeks of being locked up in solitary confinement, Liu was finally returned to the regular cell. He told his friend that later he would run away again to see his son, and then flee abroad. Meanwhile, Kong, who knew the feud between Leung and Lao's henchmen, called them to make peace. Because he was afraid of Kong, Lao's henchmen finally made peace with Leung and would not bother him. A month later, all the prisoners were doing community service outside the prison. During the break time, Liu approached the warden and said he wanted to relieve himself. The warden allowed him, but he had to shake the grass for them to know his location. Liu used this opportunity to outwit the warden. He used a rope to shake the grass from a distance. When the warden was distracted, he then slipped away. When the warden noticed and started looking for him, Liu quietly entered the police car and then used the car to escape. Kong, who saw this, immediately ran away with Liu, where they planned to escape by ship to Taiwan. However, they were tricked and eventually caught up by the officers, who deliberately used this moment to kill them both. They were then taken back to the prison, where all the inmates were ordered to come out of their cells and witness their deaths. The warden said that anyone who tried to escape would be put to death like Kong. Liu, who had also escaped several times, was eventually sentenced to death outside the prison. Meanwhile, Lao, who heard that Leung was not dead, finally planned to enter the prison and kill him. He beat up the police inspector who often came to his place to ask for security money. After being satisfied beating the policeman, he requested that he be arrested and imprisoned, and asked to be placed in the same cell with Leung. The police granted the request, and he was immediately taken to the prison where Leung was being held. Arriving at the prison, he was immediately greeted by his loyal henchmen, who even brought him his belongings. In the middle of the night, Lao prepared a knife to duel with Leung. Lao went to Leung's cell and gave him the knife, then invited him to a duel. The warden, who knew that, deliberately allowed them to fight each other. They even made a bet on who would win between them. Actually, Leung did not want to fight with Lao because his brother's death was an accident. However, Lao, who was very vengeful for him, continued to attack him and wanted to kill him. Leung was forced to fight to defend himself until finally he won, but he did not kill Lao. The warden, who was watching, instead forced him to immediately kill Lao. Making Leung angry and throwing the knife at the warden, he immediately climbed the stairs and beat the warden. But he ended up being beaten by other warders to death. Leung, who was dying, was immediately taken to the isolation room, and so was Lao. They were scheduled to be sentenced to death because they had resisted the warden. But after that incident, there was a riot between the warden and the prisoners. During the riot, Wang looked for and fought the head warden. He managed to take his gun and shoot the head warden to death. But because of that incident, Wang was also sentenced to death. Wang could only surrender. His plan to expose who killed his father ended in failure. He was then shot dead. However, after being shot, Wang did not die, but fainted. When he woke up, he was surprised to find himself still alive. At that time, the head of the prison came to him, telling Wang that his death had actually been engineered, but the world still considered him dead. And because of that, he had to work for him. At that time, he was asked to kill a drug kingpin who was about to be released from death row. And to his surprise, it turned out that he was not alone. He was with Leung, Liu and Lao, who had also previously pretended to be sentenced to death. They could not refuse the order, because if they refused, then they would really be sentenced to death. In short, they went in the Philippines and killed a drug kingpin who had just been released from prison. However, when they tried to return, they had difficulty because the place was already guarded by thousands of police and soldiers. They were pressed and tried to escape by plane. At that time, Kung was already on the plane, but Leung, Lau and Lu had difficulty getting on the plane. They tried to board, but unfortunately Lu was shot by dozens of bullets from the army. Lau and Leung also met the same fate, and they were killed by gunfire. In the end, only Wang managed to survive and return. After returning to Hong Kong, Wang immediately went to the warden and revealed his true identity, what crimes he had committed, and also about murder. When Wang catches him, he says that he is the son of the person the warden once killed using a dead prisoner. Wang actually wanted to kill the warden, but he was prevented by his partner, so he only caught him. Even so, his grudge is still not subsided. But unfortunately, the movie ends here. What do you think of this movie? Please write your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit the like button and support our channel by subscribing, so that we stay motivated to create more interesting content for you to enjoy. And until next time.